High in the misty, green mountains of China, where the bamboo forests swayed with the breeze and the rivers sparkled beneath the sun's warm embrace, there lived a mother panda named Mei Li and her young cub, Bao Bao. Mei Li was a graceful and strong panda, her fur soft as the clouds that sometimes floated lazily above the treetops. Bao Bao, her precious cub, was only a few months old, with a fluffy coat and bright, curious eyes that always seemed to be filled with wonder. The two pandas had been living in a quiet, secluded part of the forest, far from the bustling world of humans. Their days were spent in peace, eating bamboo, resting under the shade of ancient trees, and exploring the lush green valleys that surrounded them. Mei Li had taught Bao Bao the ways of the forest, how to find the juiciest bamboo shoots, how to climb trees, and how to stay close to her whenever they wandered into unfamiliar parts of the mountains. It was a day like any other when Mei Li decided to take Bao Bao on a journey higher up the mountain. The air was crisp and fresh, and the sun cast a golden glow over everything. Bao Bao was excited, bouncing around and making little playful noises, while Mei Li walked slowly, keeping a watchful eye on her cub. They reached the foot of a steep cliff, a place Mei Li had visited many times before. The cliff was a towering mass of stone, covered in patches of moss and ivy, and it was the perfect spot to look out over the valley below. Mei Li had always found peace here, as the view reminded her of the vastness of the world and the beauty of her home. "Stay close to me, Bao Bao," Mei Li said softly, her voice filled with warmth. "This place is beautiful, but it's also dangerous." Bao Bao, ever the adventurous cub, nodded and scampered up beside his mother, peering over the edge of the cliff with wide eyes. The valley below seemed to stretch forever, a sea of green and brown dotted with tiny villages far off in the distance. The cub's excitement grew as he looked out over the vast expanse. But the cliff was steeper than Bao Bao had realized. As he took a step closer to the edge, his tiny paws lost their grip on the slippery stone. In an instant, his legs slipped out from under him, and he began to tumble forward, heading straight for the drop that seemed to go on forever. Mei Li's heart leapt into her throat. Time seemed to slow as she watched her cub falling toward the abyss. Without a moment's hesitation, she leapt into action, her strong legs propelling her forward as she raced to the edge of the cliff. The wind rushed past her ears, but all she could hear was the sound of her own heartbeat, pounding in her chest. "Bao Bao," she called, her voice filled with terror. But it was too late. Bao Bao was already falling, his small body spinning through the air. Mei Li's eyes never left her cub as he fell, her instincts as a mother kicking in with a force so strong that nothing else mattered. With one final burst of strength, she dove after him, her body hurtling toward the edge of the cliff. But she wasn't going to let him fall alone. Mei Li's body hurtled through the air, driven by nothing but pure, unrelenting love for her cub. Every muscle in her body screamed as she stretched out toward Bao Bao, her mind focused solely on reaching him. The distance between them seemed to stretch endlessly as they both fell, but Mei Li never wavered in her resolve. As they neared the sharp drop, Mei Li made a split-second decision. Instead of reaching out to catch Bao Bao midair, where the impact would have been disastrous for both of them, Mei Li twisted her body, positioning herself underneath him. In that heartbeat, her only thought was to break his fall. If she couldn't stop the fall entirely, she could cushion it, keep him safe with the one thing she could control, herself. Mei Li's heavy body collided with Bao Bao, and the force of the impact sent them both tumbling downward. For a terrifying moment, there was nothing but a whirlwind of stone and earth, and Mei Li's sharp, desperate breaths. But just as quickly as the fall had begun, it slowed. Mei Li's body hit the jagged rocks below, but she had absorbed much of the fall with the strength of her limbs and the weight of her furry form. Her body crumpled against the rough terrain, and she let out a low groan of pain as she tried to steady herself. She could hear Bao Bao crying softly beside her, but the sound wasn't as frantic as it had been when he first fell. He was safe, at least, for the moment. Bao Bao, though shaken, had miraculously been protected by his mother's selfless act. He lay against her, wide-eyed and trembling, but unharmed. Mei Li, though dazed and in pain, could feel the weight of her cub's small body against her own, his soft fur brushing against her skin. She breathed a sigh of relief, her heart still pounding in her chest. She had done it, she had saved him. But at what cost? Mei Li lifted her head slowly, her vision blurry from the impact. She could feel the pain radiating through her body, especially in her legs and ribs. The fall had been much more violent than she had anticipated, and the rocks below had not been kind. Blood trickled from a deep gash on her side, and her limbs felt weak and unsteady. But still, she pushed herself up on trembling paws, trying to shield Bao Bao with her body. "Bao Bao, are you okay?" she whispered, her voice rough and strained. The little cub looked up at her, his eyes filled with confusion, but they quickly softened as he saw the pain in his mother's eyes. "I am okay, Mama," he stammered, his voice trembling. "But you're hurt." Mei Li managed a weak smile, brushing a paw gently over his head. "I'll be all right," she said, though she wasn't sure if she believed the words herself. The sun was still shining above, casting a gentle warmth over the mountain, but the air felt colder now. The dangerous cliff behind them loomed like a silent threat, a reminder of how close they had come to disaster. Mei Li's body screamed for rest, but she could not afford to lie still. She had to get them both to safety. "Come, Bao Bao," she said, her voice stronger now, though still strained. "We need to move. It's not safe here." Bao Bao hesitated, his small paws unsure, but he trusted his mother implicitly. He nuzzled close to her, his heart still racing, and together they began the slow, painful climb away from the cliff's edge. But Mei Li's strength was fading, and the climb was more difficult than she had anticipated. Her legs felt as though they were made of stone, each step sending sharp waves of pain through her. But there was no time to rest. The mountain was treacherous, and she knew they weren't out of danger yet. The fall had not only taken a physical toll on her, but it had also drained her energy. "Don't worry, Bao Bao," Mei Li murmured as they moved slowly, her voice barely a whisper. "I won't let anything happen to you." But deep down, she feared her own limitations. How long could she keep going like this? The climb was grueling. Each step Mei Li took sent sharp, stinging pain through her battered body, but she couldn't stop. Not now. Not when Bao Bao was relying on her. The mountain loomed high, and the path they had to follow was narrow and treacherous, with loose rocks and slippery edges that threatened to send them both tumbling again. Bao Bao stayed close to his mother, his tiny paws moving with careful hesitation as he mirrored her steps. He could see the strain in Mei Li's movements, the way her body trembled with every step. He wanted to help, to do something, anything to make it easier for her. But all he could do was follow her, trust her, and hope that somehow, they would find a way out of this. "Don't worry, Mama," Bao Bao whispered to her, his voice small but determined. "We'll make it. We're strong." Mei Li gave him a weary smile, her eyes softening with the immense love she felt for him. "You're right, Bao Bao," she said, her voice hoarse. "We are strong." But even as she spoke those words, Mei Li knew how close they were to danger. They were far from the safety of the valley, far from the comfort of their home. The mountain was vast and wild, with no clear path to follow, and every movement they made carried them closer to the edge of the unknown. After what felt like hours of slow, painstaking progress, they reached a small clearing at the base of the mountain. Mei Li's legs buckled beneath her, and she collapsed onto the soft ground, her body trembling with exhaustion. Her side ached, the wound from the fall burning as she lay still for the first time since the incident. "Rest, Mama," Bao Bao urged, his small face filled with concern. "I'll watch over you." Mei Li shook her head weakly, but the pain in her body was overwhelming. She could feel the heat of the blood pooling around the wound in her side, and the exhaustion was unlike anything she had ever experienced before. She was used to long days of climbing and exploring, but nothing had prepared her for the strain of the fall, and the battle to get them both to safety. For a long moment, Mei Li lay still, her breathing shallow, but steady. Bao Bao sat beside her, his wide eyes scanning their surroundings, always alert. The mountain seemed so silent now, as if holding its breath. Mei Li couldn't help but wonder if it was waiting for something. For a moment, she almost allowed herself to drift off into sleep, but the sharp pang of pain in her side jolted her back into awareness. She had to move. "Bao Bao," she whispered, her voice faint. "We can't stay here. There are predators in these mountains, bears, wolves. We need to find shelter." Bao Bao nodded earnestly. Though the little cub had been terrified after the fall, he understood the urgency in his mother's voice. He had seen the way the world worked. Danger was always just around the corner, waiting to strike. But there was one thing he knew for certain: his mother would never give up. Not ever. Together, they pushed on, leaving the small clearing behind and venturing deeper into the forest. The path was rougher now, and Mei Li's steps grew slower with each passing moment. Every so often, she would pause to catch her breath, her eyes scanning the shadows for any signs of danger. But something inside her told her that the worst was not yet over. As night began to fall, casting long shadows across the mountain, Mei Li's strength began to wane. The sky shifted from golden to purple, and the cool night air began to settle in around them. The journey had taken so much out of her that now, every step felt like a struggle. She had to keep moving, she had to, because stopping could mean the end for both of them. And then, just when she thought she couldn't go any further, she heard a sound. A soft rustling in the bushes. Mei Li's heart leapt into her throat. Her first instinct was to shield Bao Bao, but her body was too weak to react quickly. The rustling grew louder, closer. Mei Li's eyes darted around, trying to pinpoint where the sound was coming from. "Stay close, Bao Bao," she whispered urgently. The bushes parted, and out from the shadows stepped a figure, a large, dark shape moving slowly but deliberately. Mei Li's breath caught in her chest. Was it a predator? A bear? Or perhaps a mountain lion? She prepared herself to face whatever was coming, her protective instincts flaring. But as the figure emerged fully into the light, Mei Li's eyes widened with shock. It wasn't a predator at all. Before her stood a fellow panda, a large male with a broad chest and a calm, steady gaze. His fur was marked with patches of age, and his eyes held wisdom and a certain quiet strength. He was an elder panda, likely one who had lived in the mountains for many seasons, and his presence was both a surprise and a relief. "Mei Li," the male panda said softly, his voice deep and soothing. "I saw you fall. I've been following your trail." Mei Li blinked, confusion clouding her thoughts for a moment. "You followed me?" she asked, her voice shaky. "But why?" "I knew you would need help," the panda said, his gaze shifting to Bao Bao, who was standing nervously beside her. "And I knew the mountain would be no place for one so young, especially in the dark." With a grunt of effort, the male panda moved closer and gently nudged Mei Li with his strong shoulders. "Let me help you," he said. "The journey isn't over yet, but we can find shelter. The forest is not as empty as it seems." And so, for the first time since the fall, Mei Li felt the weight of hope rising within her. She was not alone anymore. And neither was Bao Bao. The elder panda led them deeper into the forest, where they soon found shelter in a hidden cave, warm and safe from the dangers of the outside world. Mei Li and Bao Bao curled together, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, they finally allowed themselves to rest. The mountain, once so full of danger, now felt like a home again. And Mei Li knew, as she drifted into a peaceful sleep with Bao Bao by her side, that no matter what challenges lay ahead, her love for him would always be her guiding light. The bond they shared, unbreakable, unwavering, would carry them through anything.